Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Art of Creation show, where we look at how choice creates, and different possibilities for creating a life and a living that can actually work for you, whatever that is. I'm your host, Rebecca Boswell, and today we are joined by Lauren Polly. She is a multi-award-winning author of The Other Side of Bipolar, this beautiful book here that I'm sure we'll get to talk about a bit during the episode today. Our topic is changing the unchangeable. Lauren is a life coach. She has a long history as a speech therapist, yoga practitioner, dancer, Disney star, all of the things that, of course, just make her a delight to have on the show today. Lauren, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Rebecca. So no one has brought up my Disney stardom in a long time. That made me really happy.
Well, I am secretly a Disney princess. I just haven't been invited to record the voiceovers yet. So that part just tickles me.
That was definitely a childhood fantasy that was like, yes, I definitely want to check that one off the box of getting to do. So
well, and it's so cool for me. I mean, here we're in this conversation, right? And there's some pretty big things that you've changed. And we're going to talk about your book, of course. And also, this thing of like, how many little girls go to dance practice, and how many children and adults go to Disney, and how many people have this fantasy, right? The greatest place on earth, and that, like, being a part of that magic. And yet how many people also are like, yeah, but it's not actually for real people. And you just did it.
I just did it.
You just did it. And even though at the time, you were creating all of these other things where it was like, I can't even be alive. And yet simultaneously, you're like, I can't really be alive, but if I'm going to be alive, I'm going to do all these things that are impossible for everyone else. So I just love the paradox and the conundrum and just that undefinable space that you have access to. And for people who are not yet familiar with your book, there will be a link in the show notes so that you can get your own copy. It reads like a novel that you don't want to put down. Brilliantly written, beautiful. I mean, the imagery, everything beautiful, and so poignant in, your vulnerability in sharing your journey and really bringing us along where we could, I could perceive those bubbles, and there were parts of my experience where I'm like, oh my goodness, I never had words for that. And now, like, I see through your experience, through your journey, all these little bits and pieces that for me never really had a place to land. And I, as far as I know, I don't have bipolar, and I've never been diagnosed as such or anything kind of close. And yet, I love that part where you get to that place in the book where you say, I realize I don't fit in any box, right? Like, nothing ticks off. And you ask that question, like, did I ever even really have bipolar? And whether you did or you didn't, in a way, is irrelevant. What you're really inviting everyone to, that I see who's reading this book, is, hey, are you willing to acknowledge all these places that you didn't really know how to make sense of it, and yet it's not wrong. And what you now have done is really found the way to transform the way that you be with those energies so that they can actually be your superpowers and your strengths, and the way that you go out and you create more in the world. So I guess we'll start with your book, apparently. Because there are so many things that were, that people would really consider unchangeable. And in this book, you show that really anything is possible. So what can you share with us, the inside scoop of, as you're going through the process, I know there were a lot of different parts and people that contributed along the way. But if you take it all to the person who's read it and also those who haven't yet, what is it really that you are wishing to create or looking to create in the world with this book and with sharing this journey, this process that you went through?
It's actually on the last page, and it was really funny because writing the entire thing, it ebbs and it flows, and the voice is there, and then it kind of goes away, and then you find it again. And really, for me, the voice with everything, not just the book, but everything else I put out into the world, it's really that space of you're not actually wrong. You are aware. There's more there. And there's more possibilities for actually being kind to yourself and taking care of yourself without smushing yourself in the box of anyone else's definition or trying to see the world through someone else's eyes. And that was what popped. It said, my biggest wish for you is that you allow yourself to explore your unique gifts and perceptions of the world. The world needs your difference. Are you willing to be it?
Yeah.
And that's how I end the book. And it's amazing. I was playing around with different lines kind of for that last culmination. And that one just went plop on the page. And I went, oh my God, that's like my life. That's why I'm here.
Yes.
And truly, if we were able to come out of that defined, you're this box, I'm that box, here's my limitation, here's my strength, not even the strengths being defined. There's just this open playing field for people to step up to be the trailblazers, the explorers, and really the change agents that can bring about a different possibility. Even if you're not looking at doing it worldwide, but even for yourself in your own space. The sense of self-peace and being comfy and cozy in your own skin, it's priceless,
Yeah. And how many of us, watching and, now and in the future, how many times have we thought, well, if we could just figure out who I am or how to get it right or how to be like the way it's supposed to be, that everything will just magically work. And yet it's kind of like setting up this impossible thing to get through, when ironically there's nothing to get through because you're already right here.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, it's just like even like modern day therapy or self-help books. Even if you actually listen to a lot of that stuff, the way to become whole in yourself and confident is actually to define who you are. It's like trying to find this sense of yourself. And most of us go about that in a really defined way. And then if you are much more of a dreamer, a seeker, an explorer, you don't quite fit that box. You don't fit any box. So a lot of times you feel a little bit lost or weird or like, I don't know myself really well. So how could I possibly change anything or choose something? It's actually a very different conversation that needs to take place in my book. It's the difference that really is the greatness of us.
Yeah. And, I know you just read that last little piece and, very soon, I hear, we will have an audio version of the book.
It's coming.
Okay, cool. Well, when it's released, we'll have to go back and add that link in later, so that everyone can find that. That will be an absolute treat. And it'll be in your voice. You're reading it.
I've actually hired a vocal actress.
Oh, excellent.
It's interesting because I kind of always thought it would be my voice reading it. And that's what everyone was saying of like, oh my God, it would be perfect, with your podcast and everything. And it's just, that wasn't what the book was asking for. At this point, it's really beyond my story. It is my story, but really and truly what I would love is for people to be able to find themselves in it. Yeah. And for me, handing it off to somebody else to be able to bring it about, that really opened up a space for people not going, oh, it's just your thing, and actually being like, oh, it could be my thing too,
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just from my point of view, it really does, you invite the reader in, and it's not just look at me, it's really drawing, I really felt like I was there and like I said before, it really tapped into different things that then kind of opened up these spaces for me of like, wow, there's some things I could look at here that, I never really looked at. And, that kind of bridges us. You, earlier this week, you had one of your podcasts that you entitled the same topic as a teaser for this show. Awesome. And one of the things that that you talk about in there is, where you have these things that you think are unchangeable, and there tend to be these two different ways of kind of dealing with them, right? And the one is where we just don't look at it at all, right? We just put it, I believe you said you put it in the basement and you just close yourself off to it and just don't even acknowledge that it's there. But when we begin to shine a little light on it, that's when, you get to kind of look at it and turn it around and play with it and poke it, and ask questions and see what's there. And oftentimes the things we think we're hiding actually aren't even that scary. We can let them go. And then on the other side, of course, having that, you call it the dogged focus, right? Where you're, so lasered in. And I kind of see that as where, where you're talking about, when people have this idea of who they want to be, right? And it's like, you kind of define it first and then try to make it happen. And it's sort of that same thing. It's where you have to have that dogged focus and you just keep looking at this thing.
Change.
Right. And yet how much do we actually have to make wrong all the things that don't fit into whatever that one point of focus is. Yeah. So where can we take this today? And I'd love to hear a little bit more about, you started to open up that space of what's possible when we go beyond those two polarities. And it's so cool, actually, because it kind of blends in the whole bipolar thing of like, you're up or you're down, right? You're so expanded or you're so contracted. And really, this is all the one conversation of inviting you into that softer space where none of them are too real. And you have a different possibility. So,
and I think it's so interesting you bring that up, because that's something that is in almost everything that I do. When it's a unique awareness that I have, because I live myself on the two extremes for a really long time. And it's fascinating to look at how often we try to change something by flipping it to the opposite and not actually looking at what else is possible. So if you're super, super sad and upset, how often do you flip to this, I'm so happy kind of thing that actually doesn't have any sense of peaceful joy to it? We think that we're going to change our money issue from complete poverty to total, utter super wealth, not taking any delight in the change that comes down the pike in the meantime. We want to change things overnight sometimes. And in doing that, you don't really give yourself the possibility for the variations in between. And you don't get the small wins along the way. So you lose focus and motivation sometimes. You also look at impossibilities. But for me, this extreme one side, the other side, or the, I'm going to change it right now, or I don't even want to look at it. You're locked in a polarity and an extreme state where you don't have the softness and the presence to be able to change it. And for me, most of the extremes that I've always been aware of in my life, they have a very harsh, aggressive, pushy energy that's always kind of made my skin crawl. I'm not quite sure what that is. It's just my body's reaction to people who function that way. And a lot of times it really is just this kind of softer possibility that allows you to hold in your awareness what you would like to change, but also allows enough breathing room. Enough space so that it can actually start to morph. And then you become more aware of these sidelining possibilities that, like you said, you can start to poke at. Instead of going directly on or hiding it away, it's more like that periphery vision of opening up to the whole vista that actually brings a lot more awareness.
So when you're working with people and, do these unchangeable things, do they come up right away, or are these things that start to show up after, you start working on something over here and suddenly you start to realize, oh, there's actually something else going on here. Or how do these unchangeable things usually show up? So those who are watching, how, where can they begin to even get a sense of what those things are in their world, in
I
their
say
life?
it's a combination. I'd say, first of all, everyone listening, find the biggest limitation you have.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. Most of us have something right on the tippy tip of our tongue. If only I had more money, if only I had more creativity, if only I wasn't wrong all the time, if only I wasn't so bad around other people. Those if only statements kind of shine a lot of light on what you're functioning from deeper down.
Mm.
And I also, it's interesting because when you start having a conversation, especially a coaching conversation where you're diving in deep with somebody, and there's just this open space of exploration, you may hit on something, and that shining a little bit of light on something just like 2 steps down that you haven't been willing to be aware of starts to open this deeper space where you can see the underlying things below and beneath that. So it's kind of a fascinating conversation. You're going to have those if only things right on the surface, and that's probably the thing you've been doing your dogged focused on, right? If only, if only, if only, that's the thing. And
Right.
then once you start looking deeper and shining the light and space on that, you may start to uncover these deeper spaces. That's really where the change starts to come in.
Yeah.
Because those are the points of view and those definitions that you're functioning from that are constantly coloring your choice. You're choosing based off of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, how many times do we have this thing here where we're always saying, if only I had more money, but it actually has nothing to do with the money, right? Because if you actually had a bunch of money, then what would you do? Or what would you be? What would you choose? But you don't ever have to get, you never have to get to that space of question, because you've already decided first you have to get the money, right? Or if only there were times in my life where I remember having that thought, like, if only I were super skinny, like if only I were super skinny, then, I have a very, she's still very tall and lean and beautiful cousin. And I was the shorter, very athletic, more muscularly built gymnast type, where she was like the gazelle dancer type. And I remember always thinking, like, oh, if only I had that body, if only I looked like that, everything in my life would be perfect. And yet, as I started to get older, I realized, how silly that is, actually, because, it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't actually change anything. Who I be is what actually creates my life. And so anyway, I know so when people are coming in and they're like, it's my money. What are some of the questions, the tools that you start to use to be able to soften into the place where they can maybe begin to see some of the things in the basement that maybe they've been hiding from everyone, including themselves?
So whatever your if only is, when that pops, like, what's your biggest limitation? Or if only you had blank, you would have the life that you would desire. What if that if only wasn't relevant?
Yeah.
So asking questions of like, well, it's always money for me. If only I had more money, I would totally do that. Well, when you look at a choice, okay, if money wasn't relevant here, what would I choose? Sometimes it's fascinating because you'll be looking at something. I had this experience actually 2 weeks ago. I had a PR agent find me, and all the public suicide, she was very, very doggedly focused on me being someone who could step up at this one moment to be able to speak about awareness and suicide and living beyond with different possibilities. And it was fascinating because I see the possibility she's aware of. It's something I'm interested in. So of course I think, oh, well, if only I had the money for that right now, I would totally choose it. And I was getting so looped up and stuck in this thing of like, oh God, I wish I had the 10 grand right now just to put towards that and get going. It wasn't until I actually said, okay, my if only right now is the money. Interesting. So if money wasn't the relevancy here, what would I choose? And it actually wasn't light or expansive to choose it right now. It's not what my business is asking for. And right now is not the time.
Yeah.
Could be the time tomorrow. Who knows? But it's fascinating because I wasn't willing to have the awareness of it's just a no right now for the timing.
Yeah.
Nothing else is wrong. It's just that, but the if only was coloring that. So the money thing was the thing I was focusing on.
Yeah.
So being able to work like that, whenever you have an excuse coming up and you're kind of going down those weird rabbit holes, if only wasn't relevant to you, what would you be aware of and what would you choose? Sometimes it's not, yes, I would totally do it. It's actually, I'm aware that it's a no right now, and that's okay. But for some reason, we think that if we're going to say no to something, we have to have this huge excuse or rationalization to be able to like say no politely or to have enough reason to. I don't know what that is. It's very bizarre.
Yeah. Or even there's sometimes this thing of like, well, I was chosen, so therefore I need to go there now. Right?
That was totally the energy.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting because it's like these things, they're almost like smoke screens, you know, and they're these loud things, but they're almost like these Band-Aids over top so that we don't see what's actually there. And when we make them more real than what we know, which in your case was like, oh, wow, yes, I would love to be a part of this. Yes, that is a piece of my future that is, you know, that is coming, and that I'm, you know, I'm on that trajectory. And, oh, actually it's not yet. And what a gift that now has come into my world, where I can even be aware that is something that I'm asking for, and that is something that I'd like to play with, and something that you can even be more tuned into with everything else that you're choosing, even if it's not that one opportunity.
And it's interesting not to make yourself wrong with that. Like, I really went down the rabbit hole for like a day and a half. It was all consuming. It was that dogged focus because I had a choice to make. It was a yes or a no. What was I going to choose?
Yeah.
And because I was focusing on that one thing, and because I had that huge energy or projection, you're the one, choose it now. Now's the time. It added a lot more of that forceful energy that I was talking about. It didn't actually have that space. For me, that's one way that I start choosing, you know, in the access bars, which is a beautiful, beautiful modality to calm your mind, quiet your body, and really open up your intuitive knowing and your awareness. In our manual, it actually gives a tool. If you think about doing something, whatever comes up right after that, that's the result it's going to create. So if you think about choosing something and your mind gets super busy and you get very stressed out, or you start having a lot of, or it gets heavy, maybe you don't desire to choose that, or maybe something needs to shift first before that becomes an open light possibility. If you think about choosing it and doing that thing and it starts to feel light and spacious and relaxed, that's the result. That's amazing. And I love that tool because it is so plain and easy. Before you choose something, just indulge it. I'm going to choose it right now, and just sense into how you and your body feel. That's going to give you more information than anything else.
Yeah. And just being willing to open up to it. I mean, I know you've played with this too, you know, just doing sort of the energetic shopping and going into all the stores, even the ones that maybe in the past you would say, well, I can't go into Louis Vuitton because I can't afford anything there, or I'm not going to go into, you know, this or that or the other. And instead just really going in, you know, barriers down, just expanding out and really receiving everything that's there, and really looking, okay, so I can choose anything. What would I choose? And it's amazing how many times I've left a store, whereas in the past, I would just pass the store and already decide that none of that was available. And going in and recognizing, if I had all the money in the world, I actually don't desire anything here.
It opens you up to more choice.
Yeah. And then when I realized, like, oh yeah, this dress at REI is only $60, and yet I love it. I can go hiking in it. I can like go swimming in it. I can wear it out to dinner. Like, there's so much joy for my body, and it's not about the money. It's about like really, okay, what would I really, really like to choose, and what's going to work for me right now?
So what that brings up, Rebecca, is like, let's look at this. How many of you are trying to change something that you've defined as unchangeable that you actually don't desire to change or need to change?
Yes.
What if it's not wrong in the first place? Like, if you actually have a financial reality that works for you, but you're looking at somebody else's and going, no, I should totally be like that. Yeah. So you're trying to change something. or you're looking at someone else's body type like you were doing. I mean, you've got a gorgeous, delectable body, you know? You're like, yes, body, thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we love each other now, but it was a journey.
But it's so funny because how many people would look at your body and do the exact same thing, and here you were doing it to your cousin's body. A
Yeah.
lot of these unchangeable things, even my mental illness, this is fascinating. Because how many would take what I went through in my book and go, oh my God, and I hear this over and over again, I'm so sorry for what you went through. And I'm like, I'm actually not.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was rough going, especially if you read the first half of the book. Holy moly, there was a lot of stuff going on. But that's who I be, and I have a level of awareness and a level of vulnerability and openness to this that really not only serves the world in creating something like this and just opening this space, but for myself. And I think there's a weird twist that we do with that. You know, how many of you are kind of like changing things for other people?
Yeah.
And not even really willing to look at what works for you. And for me, that's something super different.
Yeah.
Living as you actually are, wounds and all, open spaces and all, that's actually a really beautiful and very powerful way to be living, much more than the perfected image you may be trying to change yourself into. Yeah.
And what really pops out for me with the book and just even in general is, you know, how aware we are. And in your book, I mean, the whole, like that whole beginning, there were a couple times, several times, you know, where you were aware of other people and the judgment and like what that was creating in your world. And it just struck me so many times, and I've seen it so many times in my so many times in my life. I'm gonna see if I can, well, that may or may not happen again. Oh well, how's it get any better? So but like, how aware are we sometimes of other people's judgments of themselves when they're in comparison of us or of, you know, whatever else is around, and we pick that up and we make that our wrongness, right? I mean, for all I know, my cousin was looking at my body and envious that, you know, she wasn't, you know, stronger or, you know, could run as fast or, you know, who knows, right? And yet I just picked it up and was like, I'm not good enough, right? So how many times do we do that too? We take this awareness that we have of everyone and everything around us, and we pick up on these little bits and pieces and then make it about ourselves, even when it has nothing to do with our bodies, our beings, our personal experience. But we make it so. And yeah.
It's interesting because you just uncovered a basement thing.
Cool.
and this is how the conversations work. You know, we started with, wow, I would really like her body because if only I had her body X, Y, and Z, which is, you know, most of us what we do. And then what just popped out was, well, I'm not good enough the way that I am.
Yeah.
And so you see the layers that start to come underneath that, if only, what's the baser thing? And Rebecca, beautiful with that, of like, a lot of times what we do, we're super aware of judgment. And sometimes that judgment has nothing to do with us whatsoever. But because we're aware of it, we twist it and personalize it. And we build like stories around it. And we're very clever because not only do we build a story, we then build the proof of the rightness of the story to be there, because you'll create experience after experience that digs it in deeper. See, I don't have the right body. Look, that guy chose the tall, lean blonde. He didn't choose my body.
Or so-and-so said this, or this happened when I was 5, or this happened when I was 7, and she said this, and they said this, and they didn't do that. And then,
it's the proof of it, which is fascinating. But underneath all of that, that basement thing is that point of view, that underlying judgment of I'm not good enough the way that I actually am. But that wasn't even yours.
Yeah.
How much of that is just you picking up on it from other people? But you're so clever, you continue to dig yourself in deeper this way.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the fascinating thing with that open space of actually shining light on it, having the conversation, and also having enough space with it where there is more of an exploration of a conversation, not you have to change this one thing right now, that dogged focus.
Yeah.
That's what allows those pearls of wisdom to actually shoot out of your mouth. And that's what's fascinating about just the coaching conversations you can have, where you just let somebody go and you're like, right there.
Yeah.
You know, a little bit of light, a little bit of space, and and if you let yourself do this in your own space,
Yeah.
sometimes you'll actually start to uncover that a little bit more. Oh, that's the deeper point of view. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if I was spacious with that and I also shone light on it and it wasn't unchangeable, and perhaps it has nothing to do with me, I wonder what could be different.
Yeah.
And there's no right or wrong. It's just there you are. Okay, interesting.
And that's that piece too of that, you know, when we say choice creates, you know, it's a great little slogan. And yet it really is that thing of like, what am I choosing now? And what am I choosing now? And what am I choosing now? And when we find ourselves in that place of judgment, or in that place of excuses, or in that place of dogged focus, or in that place where it's just, right? It's like, okay, in that moment, do we continue to choose that? What will that create? Do we choose something else? Anything else? Anything else will create something different. It may not work either, right? But then you can always choose again. So when you're inviting people to choose something different, you know, whether they're hiding their dark secret in the basement, or they're out, you know, shoving it in everyone's face, right? Like wherever they are, what are some of your favorite tools to really invite people to, in a pragmatic, practical way, begin to sense and to melt into this other space, right? How do we close that gap?
Yeah, let's just do a little exercise here. So you can keep your eyes open or closed, either or works. First of all, if only nothing was wrong, everything was right, what would your living be? What would your body be? What would your money be? What would the space that you hold and be with yourself be? Your inner dialogue. And now just get the biggest limitation, the unchangeable change, to actually having and being that. What's the first thing that pops? If only this wasn't in my way, I could totally have that. And I'd like you to get the sense of that thing, that limitation, that hurdle, that roadblock, whatever that is. And if you are feeling like that is you, or is part of you, or your body, or is compressing your space so that it's kind of hard to sense you in the face of it, push it out in front of you. How far do you actually have to push that thing to actually have a sense that it is not you, and to know that it's not yours, and to see it for what it is? Without a judgment, just push it out, 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 push it out. Most people start giggling at this point. Yes, yes, yes. That's the lightness of your being without all this other stuff compressing your space and taking up room where it doesn't have to. Push it out further. And a lot of times you may push it out and get clarity of, oh, this huge money thing or this huge body thing I've been going through. Oh, that's what that is. It's the judgment that I'm not good enough, or this weird lie I have about poverty. Other times, and I invite you to play with that, can you push it out so far that it actually starts to become less solid and starts to evaporate into space? And you start to see that it wasn't real, at all. If you did nothing but walk around and every time you felt contracted, you felt limited, there was a hurdle that was like right here that you couldn't see beyond, you actually did this exercise of no. Push it out, push it out, push it out. How far do you have to go to know that it is not you? It is not yours, and to actually see it for what it is. That's an energetic, more spatial exercise. I love working in the realm of space. And for me, a lot of my awareness has to do spatially, where I start to feel contracted or smaller, or there's something pushing. It's really hard to put it into words, but I would be fine when I was younger, and then I would get around somebody and all of a sudden it went, and I'd be like, I don't know what's going on, but I feel really gross.
Yeah.
And that's just like this weird spatial thing that we actually have in our awareness. If you're experiencing that, whatever is contracting, push it out as far as you need to actually get a sense of yourself again. And to have clear enough eyes where you can go, I'm not shoving you away in the basement. I'm pushing you away so that I can see it for what it is and let it go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and just expanding, and I mean, that's, that expansion exercise, for those of you who've watched several episodes, you'll see it pop up over and over. And I mean, I use that daily. Some guests have talked about the heavy and light tool. And in the beginning, I judged myself for not perceiving heavy and light. I'm like, it's like, what is that? How do I recognize that? What's heavy? What's light? Until I did realize, oh, that's that thing that happens with my body. That's that thing where, I'm all the space in the world, or I'm in this itty bitty little living space. And, and everything is either it's like tight, or it's just small, or, it's closing in. And for me, it is that spatial thing. So for me, when people are saying, they're having trouble with the heavy light, of knowing, right? We say, well, if it's light, then it's true for you. If it's heavy, there's a lie there. But yeah, it's more of this thing of like, is there expansion in space? Is there contraction and less space? And even
you could also keep your eye on your mood. So for me, one of the things with the bipolar, the mood swings and those fluctuations, was my awareness of other people and energies in the environment. So I would feel contracted spatially at times. Other times there was a downswing in the mood. There was an anger that came out of nowhere. There was a busy, spinny mind that used to be super quiet. I describe it in the book kind of like the wind, where it's caressing your skin. It's just this delectable experience. And before you know it, it's like the wind goes inside and kicks up the fall leaves so that it's a whirlwind inside. It's those kind of interesting mood changes that you have that, if you actually look, have nothing to do with you and nothing to do with your circumstance. So what is it? It's your awareness of other people. Yeah. So you can totally play with the light and heavy, with the energy of it being light or heavy. You can play with the spatial awareness of, yes, I feel expanded, or no, I feel contracted. You could also keep your eye on your internal dialogue and your moods to watch that ebb and that flow. These are all different kind of tap-in points, and it's different for everybody. That's why I said in my book to actually start exploring your unique perception, because that's not going to look like anybody else. Yeah. And it's beautiful to have these conversations with different people, because you'll hear someone explain it in a different way and said, oh, I never got it before, but that one makes sense.
Yeah.
Because there's no one way to do anything. There's no one way to do anything ever,
Yeah. Yeah. Although we try to find the one right way for all time, don't we? We're so
the one answer forever,
Forever. Yes. I've never done that. I promise.
That's everybody's if only. If only I could have the one thing that would just make me happy, then I could just call it quits, which is so crazy.
Yes. The magic bullet, the magic pill, the whatever quick fix answer to all life forever. We had Susie Godsey on the show last week,
Mm.
and she was talking, the topic was nurturing nature.
Mm.
But we also went into all these other places, you know, that really had to do with being you, and coming to that place of, in this conversation, I'm really getting is that place where you're able to access that softness. And and she was talking about how, you know, when you're in nature, there is more space oftentimes for people will perceive like, oh, I feel relaxed when I'm in nature, I feel like myself when I'm in nature. But then in a city or with a lot of people, all of a sudden there's all this turmoil, or, you know, contraction, tension, whatever, chatter, whatever it is. And we're looking at all those places where we're picking up all the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions of other people. And I see you saying, like you said, sometimes someone else will say something, and then when you hear it again in different words, suddenly it rings true. And so these are actually very similar things between what she was saying and what I hear you saying. And I also know that you also have capacities with the earth and earth energies as well. We closed that show. She had talked about the tool, who does this belong to, and getting clear on whether, you know, whether what you're kind of dealing with or struggling with or whatever that is, really getting clear if it's yours or not, and if it's not, letting it go. And you're talking about that too. At the end, she also mentioned, you can ask, is it mine or is it something else?
Mm-hmm.
And what I heard you saying is that, you know, sometimes you may be perceiving other people, but there also may be something else that you're aware of. Did you want to speak to this, you know, earth energy piece, or that's actually not the right word, words, but there's something here. Is there something that you'd like to share with the viewers here about tapping into?
I think so often we kind of get the baser conversation of, I'm aware of other people, and we start there because it's a little easier. It's a little less weird, and it's a little bit more accessible of, I feel fine, I go around somebody and all of a sudden I'm not. Okay, I'm aware of them.
A little
Awesome.
louder and more.
It's a little louder.
Yeah.
I think beyond that, just allowing yourself to be aware, yes, of the earth, of what the earth is actually asking of you, and of your body. Your body and the earth are one. You actually have an earth body. Your body is of the earth. So to be able to kind of really acknowledge that and not allow this weird cut off thing where I'm walking on the earth, I'm not actually walking with it.
Yeah.
That's a totally different energy, and it makes me tear up. You're not on top of this thing. You're actually a living, breathing organism with it. And beyond that, actually your awareness of the spirit world. Whether you believe in the Hoogie Boogie ghosts or not, there are energies that can be people who have passed on that you're aware of. That's a huge capacity that I have. And one thing that really threw me down the crazy train when I was younger, because I would sense a presence around me, their emotions would come in and throw me just like a person in a body would. But it was easier for me to go, oh, well, it's that person because they're in a body and they're angry. So I totally get that connection. Mm-hmm. This disembodied thing over here, harder to put words to.
Yeah.
But there's so much more that we're aware of. And that's actually not only going on around us, but like right now, if you can tap in, just soften and get a sense of yourself. And again, anything that is contracting your space, push it away and expand. And tap into the energy that you're aware of with the earth. Tap into the energy of the spirit world that you're aware of. That one's more interesting. Tap into the energy of the energetic world that you're aware of. And beyond that, can you actually tap into the universes and the multiverses that you have access to? And if you are not desiring to go that big with your awareness yet, that's perfectly fine. If this is a new conversation, maybe focus on the people awareness conversation. Like I said, it's a little bit more accessible and you'll notice a huge amount of change. I would say don't rule out actually looking at, cool, this isn't someone else's. This actually may be my awareness of the earth. Also, there may be a spirit thing going on. And, sometimes it's just an energy that's joined together and has become really aggressive and assertive. Interesting. No matter what it is, you do not have to be at the effect of it. And no matter what it is, look at this. Energy is never stuck or solid. It is only us with our points of view, our definitions, and our insistent need to like shove it in the basement and hold on to it that way, or look at it like this and hold on to it that way. If you actually have that spacious presence, shine light, but be space with it, energy will actually move and change on its own, and everything is energy.
Yeah.
So this thing of something's not changeable, that's actually not true if you look at the energetic conversation and truly how the universe works. Look at quantum physics, for example.
Yeah.
If you just allowed things, and even for an example, 10 years ago, what was your greatest limitation? Has it changed even just a little? Some of this stuff will actually start to move and shift, all of it actually, naturally. You can actually add in these added tools to allow it to happen faster, create a different possibility with it, and to give yourself a little bit more pop of creative choice. But it will start to change on its own. But your awareness is varied, it's not just one thing. It's not just people.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, how much do we try to make sense of everything? And there maybe are some things that we don't have the vocabulary for, even the mental capacity for yet. And yet, can we still be aware of things, even if we don't have the cognitive capacity at the moment?
And I love that. Just one thing with it too, Rebecca, when you say make sense and also have the cognitive awareness, absolutely. And it brings up the lie that a lot of people have, that if they're aware of something, they have to do something with it. So if I can't define it, I can't make sense of it, then I can't finish with it because I don't know what to do with it. What if instead, when
and then
something
it goes
like
into
that,
the basement,
and then it goes into the basement, and then you're like, never mind, and it just kind of sits and festers in your space. Instead of doing that, if you actually allow yourself just to go, okay, I see you, moving on through, and actually allow it to be more fluid, it'll just move on. It's like watching strangers walk down the street. Interesting energy, but you know what? They pass by.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with you. Totally irrelevant. No need to act, no need to figure it out. The vast majority of stuff we're aware of and are reacting to constantly falls into that category. There's nothing to do with it. Okay. Interesting. Bye.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Bye. Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like, the opposite of what we're supposed to do or choose or be with certain things. And yet sometimes that just gives it the space to dissipate or to shift or to change that it can't do if if we're sticking it with the pin and it's wriggling there and we're just,
poking.
lasering in. Yeah.
What is that old saying about if you love something, let it go, and if it's meant to be, it'll come back to you? It's kind of a weird twist with it, but like if you actually had something that was stuck in your space, if you just let it go, even for like a day, just let it go. And if you're meant to meet it again, to do something with it, to figure it out, to look deeper, trust it's gonna find you if it's something you need to deal with.
And
if not, it'll go away.
Right. And the thing is, how much of it, so much of this stuff is just stuff that's not required, right? It's like if you have a small room with a big stink and you just keep all the doors closed, you're going to have a big stink for much longer than if you just open the doors and give it more space to, be free. Cool.
Yeah.
So changing the unchangeable, what I hear you saying is first, just really this invitation of what's your if only, getting a sense of what that is,
Mm.
and then playing with some questions around, okay, so if we took that off the table,
Mhm.
and we couldn't fail, and we had, all the choices, all the possibilities available to us, what would we choose? And then really finding a place where you can begin softening, allowing those real solid pieces to just sort of fall away. And right, like you can't hold a piece of lead with a cloud, right? It's gonna drop. So being that softness of the cloud, the space, so that those lumps that are not required can just fall away. And having, like, there's also this real sense of like that softening is, there's also this gentleness with self, right? Like all these places where we have to change, we have to fix, we have to do better, we have to get it right, or we have to not change, right? Maybe we've decided we're right where we are the best, and oh my gosh, if I gain a half a pound, or if I get a day older, or if I make one less sale, or whatever it is, right? Thinking you have to stay where you are because that's the ultimate, and you not wanting to fall, like all those things. If we can just find the places and just really destroy and uncreate everything that we've decided about that's real, so that we can have a sense of, okay, and if I just could be me right now and choose for me, having more of that space, even if it in the beginning it's like, oh gosh, who am I don't know, that's like really I don't know, if only I knew who I was. Maybe that's your if only. So in that process, as people are playing with that, are there any other pieces maybe that I've missed, or that we can illuminate here for the viewers?
It's kind of how you introduced me in my book, which I thought was fascinating because no one's picked up on that, which is of during my years of struggle of like, I don't even think that I can live, I don't even think that I can be here. There was this kind of point where I just said, fuck it. And I started doing what was fun and going after these, like, I'm going to go work at Disney World and then leave college for a month or two and actually do that, which I did. I'm going to do this now. I'm going to do this. There's just this change point where I'd invite you to come into. So often we want to change something by kind of going to the mediocre, going to the middle, just so that it's not enough. Like I can be a little happy and spacious, but I don't have to like pop to the other end of it and really outcreate it. If you actually looked at something bigger that would be really fun and light you up, that's going to be a little bit more accessible, and it's going to catapult you forward in a whole different way. That's one thing that I noticed with myself on my whole journey. Someone asked me recently, I was talking to a doctor, they're interviewing me to be in a documentary about comprehensive and holistic mental health. Yay, what would it take? But he was curious, like, how did you actually get off medication? Because you're not supposed to with this diagnosis. And not only am I off meds for 9 years, my diagnosis was overturned. That's not supposed to happen either. It's fascinating because I told him, I said, I never had that conversation that everybody has where medicines are wrong and you have to get off. For me, that was never in the conversation. I was just like, okay, this is what it is. Awesome. I'm not going to put it in the basement. It's just going to be here. But when I was able to open my perspective, I still saw choices that I had that would make my life more fun, allow me to be kinder to myself, actually have some experiences that lit me up. I just started choosing those. It was amazing. The diagnosis, which was always the major limitation and like the storyline of my life, the headliner, started to become like a subplot.
Yeah.
And then it went away, and then it went away more, and then it went away more where it wasn't even on the table. And as that happened, the doctors were able to go, you don't need this med anymore. You don't need this one. This one's not required either. And eventually through that whole process, I really, choice by choice by choice, took the trajectory of my treatment, also my life, on a whole different path. That came not from trying to fix and change the unchangeable. It allowed me, it was more actually looking at these other choices that outcreated that thing that really created the change of the stuck and solid.
Yeah.
Very different possibility. Very different.
So not putting all your attention on the thing you don't want it's actually giving your energy to the things that bring you joy, that catapult you forward with fun and have an ease to them. Yes.
And look at how much you're feeding your limitations when it's the one thing you're going to focus on. You feed it. You dive in deeper with it. You hold on to it more when you have that. Stop feeding it. Take your energy out of that thing. Even right now, pull it out of poverty, pull it out of body issues, pull it out of mental, emotional angst. Don't feed it. And where can you now guide and direct it that would outcreate it? It sounds weird, but at the same time, it's exactly what holistic models do.
Yeah.
Develop all of you. Don't just try to fix the one thing that you've decided you're fucked up around. Fix all the difference, you know?
Yeah, that which you resist persists. That which you put your, where energy goes, or where attention, what is it? Where energy goes, where attention goes, energy flows, or I mean,
and it grows,
And it grows. That's right. So what are you, what would you like to water? That which is not working by proving it's not working and why it's not working and how it can only ever not work. Or is there another possibility, and what would that be for you? And would you be willing to have the courage to choose it? Yeah.
And there's a lot of us out there who actually are. Like, you're not alone. And that's the other, and always makes me tear up. That's the other major thing with my book is most people who are feeling different or wrong or weird or kind of just too sensitive for the world. That's how I always felt, of like, God, it's just so harsh and unkind here. It's easy to feel like you're the lone ship in this big, vast ocean pushing you around. You're not alone. Just really start opening your eyes and your energy up to see who or what is here to support you, and allow yourself to receive that,
Yeah. I don't know if I made this up or picked it up somewhere along the way, but that piece, and I remind myself often, you are the only one and never alone.
Yeah.
And it's that thing of, it's all, it seems like a polarity. It's not. It's actually, it's all part of this greater adventure that we get to be on together. And when we can find, and it's when we can acknowledge, right? Because it's here, guys. Like, it's right. You got it already. So it's, we think we're seeking, we're looking to find, and it's, are you willing to just acknowledge what's already there? And all those things that seem too big or too scary, or, that you don't want anybody to know about, what if you could take everything from this episode and be with it and have that softness? I wonder what else can emerge. And man, we want to play with you. So
come on out.
So come on out and play. All that other stuff, let it go, let it go. Oh, my Disney princess. See, I got to bring it finally out there. My 15 seconds of Disney princess fame. There it was. Lauren, thank you so much for this conversation. When people watch this and they would like more of you, what is the best way to find you and to play with you and to have more of these conversations?
So everything's on my website at laurenpolley.com, LaurenPolley. And I just noticed my name is written on the bottom of the screen. Makes it easier. And I would definitely invite you to start listening to my podcast. It's the Lighten Up Podcast with Lauren Polley. And it's all about really creating the life experiences that will change where you are currently, just to bring you on a whole new exploratory path. And there are 14-minute episodes once a week, so it's a quick pop of a possibility. And different energies come to play. So I would say that's kind of a beautiful way to dive into not just this one conversation and this one breath, but all of these different possibilities and energies that we have to play with. So I invite you to come listen. And of course, my beautiful book is on Amazon and in the Access Consciousness shop, as well as on Target.com, The Other Side of Bipolar.
Awesome. Very cool. So those links, if you're scrambling to find a pen or paper, don't worry about it. Those are in the show notes below. So you can find those links, click on them, and you'll be on your way to more greatness with Lauren. So Lauren, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to put out in the world in this 10 seconds before we wrap?
Quote from one of my mentors, Dr. Dane here, pops of, if nothing was impossible and everything was changeable, what would you choose?
Yes.
And that's one that plays through my mind all the time. If nothing was impossible and everything was changeable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can use it as a fill in the blank too. So when you have that thing from moment to moment, it can change. But if in that one moment and it's like, oh, this is impossible. Oh, I have a tool for that. I can just insert that into the blank. So awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you, everyone watching. Of course, you co-create these episodes simply by being in the energy of them. If you like it and you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, please do so. Please like the Art of Creation Show page on Facebook. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, certainly let us know. Any guests that you'd like to see on the show, we'd love that feedback as well. So until next week, happy choosing. And I wonder what we'll discover next. Goodbye, everyone.